I'm Max Keiser. This is the Keiser Report. You know, there's a war for independence being fought in Iceland by the people who want to break free from the occupation of London bankers. And I'll be talking to somebody from Iceland after the break. The question, of course, is, will America stage a new war for independence from the occupying bankers on Wall Street that are killing people on Main Street? Listen to MIT economist Simon Johnson pointing out the obvious, that America runs on moral hazard.
Simon, all right, crisis is just beginning. What do you mean?
I mean, Erin, very simply, that we now have a financial system that's completely based on moral hazard, too big to fail. All the big banks left standing believe that they are immune from any future failure because that's what happened in the last year. That's what Tim Geithner has told them. That's what Larry Summers has told them. And crazy things happen when you have a financial system like that.
Moral hazard is banker speak for we're ripping people off blind and nobody's telling us not to do it anymore. That's like Tony Soprano saying, I'm not a gangster, I just suffer from moral hazard. Now it's time for the Max question. Should Tiger Woods convert to Islam? That's the Max question. I asked this question because of something I heard on Fox News last week from Brit Hume.
He's said to be a Buddhist. I don't think that faith offers the kind of forgiveness and redemption that is offered by the Christian faith. So my message to Tiger would be, Tiger, turn to the Christian faith.
Forget Christianity, Tiger. Convert to Islam. It's a great religion. For example, Islam has Sharia law, which forbids usury, and usury is what caused the global banking crisis to begin with. If Lloyd Blankfein, CEO of Goldman Sachs, were Muslim, the American economy would not be in the terrible shape that it is today. What do you think? That's right, you. What do you think about this important question? Should Tiger Woods convert to Islam? Here's the email address, keiserreport@rttv.ru. That's keiserreport@rttv.ru. Now let's turn to political analyst Stacey Herbert to get this week's updates. Stacey.
Hello, Max. Can I answer your question?
Of course you can.
Well, I think he should convert because then he could just marry all 20 of his mistresses, and it would be a whole lot cheaper to maintain 20 wives than to have one of them divorce you.
Oh, I get it. Maybe I'll convert to Islam.
But going back to moral hazard, in the United States this week, we see the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission starting to hold public hearings at the start of this week.
Show trial, show trial. No, tell me more.
No, exactly. This is supposed to determine the cause of the financial crisis. Everybody already knows it's caused by fraud and collateralized debt swaps and synthetic collateralized debt obligations and all these fancy tools of fraud.
That's right.
But apparently they're going to have a multi-million-dollar investigation to find out.
Well, it's modeled after the Pecora Commission, which came in after the crash of 1929 and during the Depression. And this is as a result of the Pecora Commission, of course, things like the Securities and Exchange Commission were established, the Glass-Steagall Act were established, but all that stuff's been wiped away, and the window of reform is now shut. Barack Obama has been captured by the bankers, and there will be no reform. That's my prediction.
But also, the Pecora Commission, they hired an investigative journalist to find the evidence of wrongdoing. In this case, we're just seeing the same old hacks and lobbyists in charge of, interrogating the so-called bankers to see if they can, explain their crimes.
Well, here's the short solution is replace Tim Geithner with Peter Schiff, and America would be a lot better off. Go ahead. What else?
Well, see, speaking of Timothy Geithner, we have a headline, Geithner's New York Fed pushed AIG to withhold information from the public. So here's a government spokesperson, a representative, now being in charge of investigating what happened with the whole financial crisis. And it emerged this week via Huffington Post investigation, these emails they acquired through Freedom of Information Act, that, in fact, Timothy Geithner's New York Fed was telling AIG, the largest insurer in the world who was bailed out with over $100 billion of U.S. taxpayer money last year, he told them not to reveal information to the public and the SEC, namely that don't mention the fact that you're paying Goldman Sachs and Societe Generale and all these other banks 100 cents on the dollar for those credit default swaps.
Well, that's why people in America should follow the people in Iceland and stage a revolt for independence from occupying forces of the bankers. And in the case of Geithner, it's clear that what you've got here is a case of a criminal syndicate. And the reason why they're having trouble prosecuting these criminals is because they refuse to treat them as a syndicate. So if they treat them one by one, individual fraud cases, they just shuffle all the liabilities and the bad debts to their buddies, whether it's in another bank, or they place the blame on the rating agencies or some other politician. But they need to address the entire problem as racketeering, as it is. Geithner is a racketeer. He is like, the gangsters of the 1930s, Al Capone, for example.
Well, so because the government is filled with racketeers, you have to look for where else in the world are they trying to solve the problem of banking crimes. And here's a headline which shows shareholders strike back. Now, this is in the headline, you see a picture of Lloyd Blankfein, the chairman of Goldman Sachs. So apparently there's a lawsuit has been filed against Goldman Sachs where they're claiming that the bonuses paid last year are bigger than the earnings.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the shareholders of Goldman Sachs aren't doing well. So in this so-called ownership society of America and capitalism, as they call it in America, the shareholders, which are supposed to reap the benefit of capitalism, are not getting as much as the insiders. That's not capitalism. As I said, Blankfein should convert to Islam along with Tiger Woods. The whole economy would be better off as a result.
Well, Ken Brown is the shareholder who launched this lawsuit. And he's maintaining that last year in 2008, Goldman Sachs paid $4.82 billion in bonuses, but their earnings were only $2.32 billion. Thus, their bonuses were 259% more than their income.
Right, and if they need extra money, they go to the government with either Geithner or Hank Paulson. They do an extortionary racket where they threaten to blow the place up. They're suicide bankers. Geithner, Blankfein, Jamie Dimon, Hank Paulson, they're suicide bankers. Just like the underwear bomber's a suicide guy who's trying to blow up people in Detroit. These guys are suicide bankers. Okay? And they threaten, either give us the money or we're going to blow everything up. Okay? That's why they're not only a criminal syndicate, but they're financial terrorists.
Well, here's another campaign against Goldman Sachs. And this is another way of going around it. First, you have the shareholders suing him, Goldman Sachs. And now you have how the Teamsters beat Goldman Sachs. So these are the truck drivers across America, and this is their union, the Teamsters. 30,000 truck drivers worked for a firm called YRC Worldwide, and this is a big trucking company. Now, they were introduced to a notion called basis packaging, and what this was is they needed to restructure their debt. So when you restructure your debt, you have to go to the bondholders. Apparently, the bondholders, the largest of them being Goldman Sachs, actually had bought credit default swaps on that debt, meaning they would actually make more money if the company went bust.
If they whack the company.
If they whack the company.
Like Tony Soprano, they whack the company.
Well,
they kill the company and they make more money.
Well, the mafia has had many run-ins with Teamsters and truck drivers over the years.
That's right.
Well,
where's Jimmy Hoffa, by the way?
Well, he is in this.
Is he buried under Goldman Sachs' new building, their new Midtown headquarters? Underneath the foundation is Jimmy Hoffa.
Well, James Hoffa Jr. is involved in this story, and he let it be known that he would make public the names involved in this situation and would send his Teamsters, all 30,000 of them, outside the doors of Lloyd Blankfein and the headquarters of Goldman Sachs if they didn't back down. And sure enough, Goldman Sachs backed down, and they went so far as to get other bondholders to back down as well.
Well, the thing is that when Blankfein or Paulson threaten the American people, give us your money or we're going to blow up this economy. It doesn't work when you have a union like the Teamsters who have experience with the mafia and they say, look, you're going to try to steal our money, we come at you with a pipe and we're going to bash your brains in. And America should consider that as an alternative. If they don't give their money back, they should go down to Wall Street and bash people's brains in.
But all of this is a problem of debts that cannot be repaid. So they will not be repaid. Right now, there are all sorts of rackets on trying to squeeze as many of the last pennies as possible out. But brings me to your story about Iceland.
Yeah.
The headline is, Iceland to hold referendum on ICE-Save bill after Grimson veto. So Olafur Grimson, who is the president of Iceland, declined to sign into law the bill that was passed by the Icelandic parliament, whereby they would take a loan from the UK and the Icelandic citizens would be responsible for paying it at 5.5% interest rate over the next 15 years. It amounted to 20,000 euros per Icelandic citizen. Now, Iceland's now putting it to referendum, and of course the population is likely that they'll vote no. But I want to show you some footage from some news reports from the UK and the US from Bloomberg News where they are just attacking Iceland.